Hey friends, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today we are in the sewing room and I'm getting ready to share with you how to make a fun project with some of the blocks that we have been making this summer. So if you want to see what I've come up with, stick around. Thanks for sticking around. Well, recently I released this Bluebird pattern right here. And I had said in this video that I was planning on making something using this block. And I was hoping to get it done so I could share it with you. Well, last night I finished it, got it quilted, and today I am going to put together all the videos showing me putting it together, and you're going to see how to make the project that I'm going to share. So this project is actually not only using the Bluebird block, but it's also using our Sawtooth Star flag block. It's using a cherry block. Remember our cherry block that we made? It's using the strawberry block that we made, and then I'm going to share with you how to make a chain block. And so we're going to be using all of those blocks to put together this project. And this project is a runner, and it can be for a table or it can be for a bed. Now, if you want to turn this into a quilt, it would be really easy to do. You just add more blocks. I was thinking I would make it into a quilt, but I already have something similar to it that people have been asking me about, and I didn't have the time to put it together into a whole quilt in order to get it out to you by July. So I was hoping to get it done before the 1st of July, but that didn't happen. But it's still, you've got plenty of time to do it if you want to make it. It doesn't take that long. It's just in the summertime, it is very busy here, and I don't have as much time to spend in my sewing room. So when I had time, I was in here working. And a lot of it was enlarging some of our blocks because I'm not using the same size blocks. I have enlarged several, and I have given you all the cutting instructions, and that will all be found in the description box below. So you'll have everything you need for cutting. Again, just like I always say, I don't write the directions out because I'm not a pattern writer, but if you watch this video, you can make this project. You've got everything you need. So let me first of all share with you what this project looks like. And I'm just gonna put a picture right here because it's too big for me to hold up in front of the camera for you to see very well. So I thought just putting this big picture would be perfect. So as you can see, it has the flag block, the cherry block, the strawberry block, and right in the middle we have our Bluebird block. I also incorporated a chain block that you'll see woven throughout this runner. And I think it goes together so nicely. Now, if you have watched my intro, this may be reminding you of a quilt that I have made. I have had many people reach out and ask me where they could get the pattern for the quilt I have in my intro. And I'll just put a picture of it right here. And this one is one that I made probably several years, it's been several years now. I don't even, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I can't even remember, I've lost track of time. But it is one that I just made up. I had used, the bird block there is a Tilda block, and she has free block patterns on her site, Tilda Fabrics. And so I used that. I may have resized it, I don't remember. I also found a free pattern for Cherries off of I think it was a Moda or Riley Blake pattern, and I used that. I may again have resized it, I can't remember. I either made my own strawberry block and then I made my own flag block. I just can't remember where I had gotten those blocks or if I had just made my own. And so when people asked, I told them, I'm sorry, I can't share with you the pattern because it's just one that I had made up just kind of as I went. I had in mind what I wanted, and that's what I came up with. Well, since I didn't have a pattern for that, I thought since I've been sharing all these blocks that I have designed, I can now share with you a pattern that if you want to make that quilt, you can, but it will look a little different because your blocks will be a little bit different. And I hope, I kind of like the blocks that I have here better than that one. So I hope you do too. So let me bring you down to the table, and I'm going to give you a close-up of this runner and talk a little bit about the blocks, because there's a few things I want to let you know before we get into the tutorial on how to put all of this together. So let me just turn this camera down and bring you down to my table. So here I have a closer up look at our runner, and I've got it all quilted. I did a machine sewn binding, and I use the fabrics that are with Minnick & Simpson, just like I was talking about in several of my other blocks. I love their patriotic colors, and so that's what I stuck with. All the fabrics except for the solids here are Minnick & Simpson. So, oh, and I don't know if you can see the quilting pattern, but it's got a star and then these feathers. And I thought that looked really good on it. And on the back, I just had this fabric that I've had for a while and didn't really have a need for this, but I thought it would make a really pretty backing of a quilt. And so it worked just fine for this. Now this runner is measuring 58 and 3/4 by 31 inches. So it is a big runner, and it will fit on a twin bed really nicely at the end of the bed. It will also fit with just a little bit of hangover, not much, on a full, and then on a queen bed, it just covers the bottom part of the bed, just the top part. So if you wanted it to be a queen bed runner, you might want to add a block on each side, and that would be fine. But measure your bed and then decide how much you want it to hang over, and then you can adjust it from there. So this runner uses 2 of the cherry blocks, and it uses 2 of the strawberry blocks, 2 of the flag blocks, and 2 of the bird blocks. Now originally our cherry blocks were 3 by 6 for each cherry block, and then it made a 6 by 6 block when we put them together. The strawberry block that I shared with you was, I believe, a 4-inch finished block, and that is what we used for the pin cushion, I think. And these flags were 8 inches. So I've gone in and I've refigured and enlarged the pattern for the cherry blocks and the strawberry blocks to be 8-inch finished blocks. So in the description box below, you're going to find those patterns so that you can have them. Now the videos will show you exactly how to put them together, and it's okay that it's going to be a different size, but just know that those are going to end up as 8-inch blocks for this right here. And so you can watch the videos and put them together with the 8-inch cut pieces. Now the flag, originally, if you watch that video, this was actually, it finished at, let me just check it out real quick. It finished at 7.5 high by 8.5, and I said you could add a little fabric up here and up here, or just wait and see what you're putting it into, and you might not even need to make it a square block. For this, I need an 8-inch block, and so we just are adding another stripe to the bottom, and I will tell you in the video what the size is. I'm still sharing the same pattern that I shared for the block originally, so you may even have that one copied. But instead of having this here and this here, we're just going to add another stripe at the bottom. So you'll just need to watch the video, this one right here, and I will share with you how big to cut that piece. So once you have all of your blocks made, and the Bluebird blocks are all the same as what we made earlier. Once you have those, let's see, that's eight blocks made, we are going to be putting it together. And so I have made this really cute chain that goes through all of our blocks and just kind of brings it together. So that's this block right here. And it looks so, you know, if you're a new sewer and you see that, you think, wow, how did they do that? But it's just another block. And so it's very simple to do. This chain block right here is from here like this. It's an 8-inch finished chain block. Now we do have sashing, and those sashings are going to have cornerstones, and we'll talk about that too. But this chain block is super easy to make, and we use strip piecing since we're making 10 of them, and they go together real quickly. And that is something you're going to see at the very beginning of this video. I'm going to show you how to make these chain blocks right here, and you will have 10 of those. I have given you this sheet here in the description box below to tell you what size to cut your pieces, and then the video is going to show you how to strip piece them and put them together so they go together really quickly. So this is going to be in the description box below too. So you're going to have all 4 sawtooth block, cherry block, bluebird block, chain block, updated strawberry block, and this was the updated cherry block too. You're going to have all of those in the description box below. Then the final thing, which is also new besides this chain block, is you're going to have a picture of this runner right here, and you're going to have the sashing and binding cutting charts. And this is the sashing, the border, and the binding. I might need to change that. So some of these might be edited after I finish and find any errors. So this right here is what you're going to cut to put all of this together. And in the video, I walk you step by step how to do that. So I hope that these make sense to you. So here is the video. Again, we're starting off with the chain square block, and then we're moving into putting it all together. So I hope you enjoy this video, and I hope you get a chance to make it. Thanks. Today we're making chain blocks, and for the project that we're making it for, we need 10 of them. But these chain blocks are fun to make, they're easy to do, and you can incorporate them into so many different quilts. When you add a chain block, you actually make a secondary design in your quilt, and that's what makes this so neat. And I really like the effect of adding chain blocks to quilts. So this is the way I designed this one. I have the cuts up here, and then the diagram here, and we are going to be strip piecing this chain block set because we are making 10 of them. Now, if you were just making one chain block, you would just do it a much easier way. There's several different ways to do a chain block, but since we're making 10, I want to make this quick and easy and using less sewing and just put them together nice and quickly. So I have cut the fabric already. according to my diagram here. And the strip piecing design that I'm using is we are going to put fabrics together and sew them into big strips. And then we're going to subcut those strips. So we're going to have a subcut that looks like this, a subcut that has a white, a red, a white, a red, and a white that looks like this. And then we'll have this subcut, a white and a red and a white in a bigger block. So these are the 3 blocks that we are actually making, and then these are just the repeats. And so when we get these stripped together and then subcut them, we'll just be putting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strips together and sewing them together. And it should go nice and quickly. There's also different ways where you can do the corner blocks up here, do a 4-patch, and then just add strips in between. That works nicely too. But we are going to try this one and see how quickly it goes. So I've got my strips all labeled. And now what we need to do is, since I have, and I do want to point out, WOF on the patterns means width of fabric. So if you're cutting your fabric and you have your long yardage, it's always folded, and then the selvages you keep at the top when you're cutting it. That length, the width of that big bolt of fabric, not the length of it, but the width of it, is your width of fabric. And most fabric is around 42 inches, give or take. And once you cut off the selvage, you're left with usually about 41 inches of usable fabric. So, some bolts of fabric are bigger, some are smaller, but they range around 42 inches. So I have you cut strips off of your yardage, and that way we're going to piece these together quickly. Now, if you're planning on using scrappy colors and you just want to use your scraps, there's probably an easier chain block to use than this. You probably want to just take your 1 3/4 inch squares and put 4 together to make a four patch, and then put 3-inch squares here and a 3.5-inch square here. But you'll have to look at the cuts here and decide. Actually, this is 3 by 3.5, and then there'll be a 3 by 3.5, a 3 by 3.5, and a 3 by 3.5, and this is a 3.5-inch square. So if you're just making scrappy, you will probably have to piece them, or if you have a big enough section of your scrap fabrics, you can still strip piece, but you won't get as many out of them. So you can still do this with scrap, but you need to have some lengths of fabric to do it. And these cutting directions will not work for you. So let's give this a try. Now, we do have it cut by width of fabric, but I have found I don't like to cut strips and sew strips that long. So I'm going to cut all of my strips in half, and that way my strips are only going to be half of the width of fabric, and it's easier to manage them, and it's easier to keep them from getting wonky and skinnier in some areas and wider in others. And sometimes when we're cutting, that bottom fold makes a little dog leg. If you don't know what that is, that means it curves a little bit, and that could mess you up when sewing. So if you just cut it right there, you're going to lose that dog leg. So I'm going to be putting these together with half strips. That way I won't be having as many problems with my strips not being squared up nicely. So let's look at the first thing that we're going to do. Let's go ahead and put this first strip together. So we're going to need strips A and strips C. So let me I'm just going to grab 1A and 1C. And we only have 1C. So let's put this over here. And I've already cut my 1A in half, so I need to cut my C in half. Now, your fabrics that you're using may not have the same width of fabric length. And so if that's the case, that's fine. Just match them up on one end. Let's see how these do. Different manufacturers do things a little different. Now I am using a white on white, so I'm going to be looking at this carefully to make sure that I have that right side up, and I do. And all I'm going to do with my solid fabric, which are going to be the cornerstones, and see this one, you can already tell the white is the longer piece, and I'm putting my selvages up here, and I'm just keeping them on because I'll just use that as scrap at the end. But I am matching down here so that I can get the most use of my fabric, and I won't have to cut too much off to straighten the edge when I start cutting my pieces. If you're a new sewer and you're new to quilting, pin this before you start so that it's easier for you to control. So let me sew here, and I'll bring you right back. So here I have my piece sewn together, and when I press it, I am going to press it toward the dark, and that means this seam back here will be underneath the dark fabric. And if we do that throughout, these stitches should nest whenever we're connecting them with other strips. So I'm going to give this a press. Before I do, I want to share with you, I use this seam guide, and it's just a magnetic metal piece that goes right up next to your presser foot. Whenever I'm doing long strips like this, I like to use this especially because it will keep my fabric, just needs to be butted up against it, and it will keep my stitch at a 1/4 inch. Now my needle moves on my machine, so I can put it right up next to my presser foot. But if your needle doesn't move, you might have to have it further away depending on where the 1/4 inch is on your sewing machine. But this really helps me. I got this one in a sew sampler box, and it has a really strong magnet. I know there are some out there like at Walmart and stuff, and I have purchased one before and it just wasn't very good. I don't think the magnet was strong enough. This one actually takes a lot of force to pull up, so it does hold really well when there's fabric pushed against it. So if you're trying to find ways of keeping even seam allowances, you might look into something like this. So let me press this and I'll bring you right back. So there we have it, nice and flat and pressed toward the dark. Now when you are pressing, make sure that you don't have any little pleats that get in your seam line there. It will distort your strips. So make sure it's nice and don't stretch on it or push it too hard when you're pressing. Try to keep it nice and straight. Now this piece right here is going to be making these long sides right here. So we are going to need to cut this, subcut it into 1 3/4 inch strips. So we're going to do that now. And I am right-handed, so I'm going to turn my fabric this way, and I'm going to straighten up my edge. Now whenever you're working with strip piecing like this, you can line up any line on your ruler with one of the seams that you have, and hopefully everything else will line up. But just find a seam and follow that, and it looks like all my other ones look pretty good. So I am going to go ahead and trim off this little bit jagged end piece, making sure I get a little bit of all of it, and throw that away. Now we're going to turn it this way. Again, I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, yours is going to be opposite. And we're going to do 1 3/4 inch strips. And you do want to be accurate. It'll save you a big headache later. So I've got this seam right here, and I've got a straight line on it. And I'm looking up here, and I'm looking here and here, and it looks good. So we need 2 of them. So I'm just going to cut 2 of them for right now. 1 and 2. Now, if you're making the whole 10 blocks, you just do the whole strip. And remember, this is just half of that long strip that we had, this is half of a width of fabric. So you have 2 strips that you're going to be making like this. You're going to need 2 for each, 2 of these for each block. So that means you're going to need 20 of these strips right here. So I've got my 2 right there. And I'm going to put these right over here so that we can have them. For our next strip, we're going to do this one right here. And we need E, A, and D. So I have my white, which is E, my red, which is A, and my D, which is 3.5 inches. Let's just make sure I got the right one. Yes, I do. Okay, so we have E, A, and D. So let me lay those out. Remember, we need to cut the length of fabric in half so that we don't have such long pieces to work with. And we can keep them nice and straight. We will use both pieces of the red and the white, but we only need this one right now from the D. We'll do the other one, we'll make another strip later. Again, for this one, you're going to need 2 of these per block, and that means you'll need 20 altogether. So you'll need to make this strip twice, okay? So let's lay it out. Right sides up. Here is our middle piece, D. Then we have a red, and again I'm doing the selvages down here. Another red here. And then a white and a white. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to sew these 2 little strips right here and here together, the thin ones. So I'm going to put right sides together on this one, and I'm going to stitch right here on this side, right sides together on this one, and I'm going to stitch right here on this side. Remember, 1/4 inch. And here I have my pieces all pressed. I pressed toward the dark. And remember, when you're pressing, don't stretch your fabric, keep it straight. So here's the way it's supposed to look. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add this piece right here, so right sides together, 1/4 inch. Then after I get that one done, I'll do the same over here. I'll put the right sides together and sew 1/4 inch away from the edge. So I'll bring you back when I have that done and everything's pressed to the dark. And there I have all of those pieces sewn together and pressed, and again pressing all the seams toward the dark side. Okay, so let's get 2 of these. Let's trim the edge first. Again, I find a line and look and see if my other lines look pretty good. Make sure we get a little bit of everything, and we did. Now I'm right-handed, so we're putting it back over here, and 1 3/4 of an inch. Let's see, I'm going to use this side. Put that seam on a line, check and see if everything else looks good. And there is 1. And 2. So we'll save this for the other ones. Again, you'll need 2 for 1 block, and you'll need 20 for 10 blocks. Let's see if these are lining up. So in our pattern, looks good. Those look good. Now we need to do the one strip in the middle. And the strip in the middle is F and B. So we'll need a B in the middle and the F's on the outside. So we will cut our width of fabric in half again. And we'll save this one to use for all of the other blocks. Then we'll need to split this one in half, and we'll need both of these. Okay, so let's move this out of the way again, and these pieces can go right there. And my selvage is down here, right side up. Okay, there's the way it's going to look. So again, same thing. Right sides together. We're going to sew right here 1/4 of an inch away. When that one's done, we'll put this one right here and do that 1/4 inch away again. I'll bring you right back. And there we have that piece right there. So let's trim off and straighten up our edge. Find a line. And we just need one of these for the block. And this needs to measure 3 1/2. And we'll use the rest of this plus make another one for the other 10 or 9 blocks. So now we have all of our strips sewn together and subcut, and we have all the pieces for our block. So let's lay it out and see if it fits. And you're really looking for whether those match up at the corners. Now the fabric does have a little bit of stretch, so usually you can fudge it just a little bit. But if you're noticing they're not matching up very well, check your cuts, make sure you cut at the right size. Also make sure that your seam allowance is correct and that you are making a nice straight even line. And even when you are sewing, make sure your fabric is butted up right together. There shouldn't be any overlapping. If there is, that's going to mess your block up. It should be right together, okay? So now we're ready to piece this all together. So we're just going to start right here, and I am going to take these 2 pieces, right sides together, and here we have our beautiful nesting seams right here. Put a pin right there and a pin right here. And since I'm doing this one on the left, I think I'll go ahead and do the one on the right as well. Right sides together, and just make sure you pin on the right side. If you pinned over here, it wouldn't work. Well, actually it would. You could turn it. Never mind. So let's make sure we get those seams nested. And nested. Now, if I am sewing all 10 blocks together, I would just go and I would just make a whole, the 20 of these. I would just take these 2 pieces, put them together, make 20 strips just like this. That way you can just run them through your sewing machine all at once. but since we're just doing one block together to show you how it goes together, we're just doing one at a time. But it can be really simple, and when I do the rest of these, that's how I will do it. So here we have those pieces. Now when I pressed these open because the red and the white are such different colors that if the red is underneath the white, a lot of times it will show through. But if you press it open, it's the same color on itself, so it's just the white showing through the white. So you can press whatever way you like, but I thought that would probably be the best option for me. Now I've just got to add these two right here, and again we have, now this time I did not press this right. I should have pressed this toward the dark and I didn't. So I'm going to repress this, and then I'll have to repress my strip. I think I know what I did. I was pressing and I was thinking since I was pressing on the dark, I was pressing toward the dark. Nope, I didn't press toward the dark. Now it's correct. Now it will nest really nice. So we will nest these two right here. And we will nest these two right here. And I'm going to go ahead and put a pin at the end since there's a little bit of a space between that first pin. And that way our ends will be sure to match up. Just like that. So I'm going to sew that one 1/4 inch away, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to add this one. Now when you're adding these, make sure you've got the shorter strip here with the red and the white squares inside. You don't want to turn it that way. That would be an interesting block though. Sometimes when we make mistakes, we learn to make new blocks. So I will bring it back when I have both of these sewn on. And there is our chain block all set, and if you needed to trim it up, you can. Mine looks pretty good. There's a few ends there that probably could be trimmed, but it will be perfect to put in the quilt. So here we have it. It should be 8.5 by 8.5 unfinished, and yes it is. And once it's sewn in, it will be an 8-inch square. So the rest of these blocks are going to go so quickly because I've already got the strip sets made up and the fabric cut. Now these might look a little big right now, and that's just because we haven't used up that seam allowance yet, but these two are going to be the same size. But I really like it, and I am going to get busy and finish the other 10. So here is the layout right now, and I've just got it on my design board, and my design board right now is not long enough because I don't have any sashing in there, but I just kind of wanted to see if I liked the colorway and everything and the way that's laid out, and I do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting sashing between all of the blocks and on each end as well. So that's what I'm going to do first. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it out this way, so it'll be sideways, but it will fit on my design wall. So I think it's going to look really nice. And the sashing has those cornerstones, so it will add to that chain, and it will make it a little bit bigger as well. So let's get started adding the sashing between the blocks. Now we're going to be doing the sashing, and we've got our blocks all made, and we need to add sashing between each one, and then of course the sashing strips on the tops and bottoms, and these should be covered with the ones on the side. So there's two options of cutting, and I was debating on how I wanted to do all of this sashing. Now you can take just 8.5 inch by 1 3/4 inch strips, and you can put red squares, 1 3/4 inch squares on each one, and sew those on across the top and the bottom on these horizontal strips. but I really didn't want to do all of that sewing because it's just monotonous doing those. So I decided that I was going to do some strip piecing. And so if you want to just do these two cuts right here, squares and strips, you would do option B, and I've got what you need to cut for that. If you want to do it the way that I'm going to show you, it is option A, and I've got the cuts for that. And it just helps us get 12 nice cuts of our sashing with the red fabric on both ends in just, you know, with two seams, and that's it. So that's what we're going to do. There are other ways to do this to make it easy, but I think this one's the easiest that I feel for me, but you can make it however you want. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take piece D, which is my 8.5 by 25 inch piece of fabric. So it's a long, thick rectangle, okay? And I'm gonna take the two B's that I cut, and these are just 1 3/4 inch strips by 25. And I am going to put right sides together, making sure my right side is the right side. And I am just going to, see if you can see this. I am just going to sew right down the side, 1/4 inch away, and pin that if you need to. If you're a beginning sewer, I would definitely pin it just so that your fabric doesn't shift on you. But we're gonna do that. And then I'm gonna take this other one and I'm gonna do right sides together again on this side. And I'm going to do the same thing, 1/4 inch away from this edge all the way down. And when I get that done, I'm gonna bring you back. All right, so here is my strip, and I went ahead and pressed toward the red. That way all the seams are going to be nesting. Now what we need to do is we need to slice this into 1 3/4 inch strips. So let me get my cutter and my ruler. And let's just go down to this edge first. And this is really similar to what we were doing when we were making our chain blocks, just a longer strip. And so I'm just going to find on my ruler a line and match it up with that seam right there. And I check and see if the other ones look good, and just in case I've gotten some kind of a pleat in there. So be sure when you press, you don't have any pleats in here. And once I know it's straight, I'm just going to trim off the end. And then I'm going to turn my fabric since I'm right-handed. And I am just going to be cutting 1 3/8 inch pieces. Now, if you are comfortable, you could fold this in half, trim both ends, fold this in half, and do 2 at a time. I'm just going to do 1 at a time just because it's a little bit easier on camera just to trim. So I need 1 3/4 of an inch thick. So again, I will take my ruler, find a line, see if it matches up with the seam, and then make sure it says 1 3/4 all the way down. And then when I'm sure it does, trim it off. And I'm gonna keep doing this until I have 12 strips. Now I gave you a little extra fabric to play with because sometimes we make mistakes. So if you make a mistake, there should be enough to get at least 1 out. I can't remember now how much extra I gave, but you've got at least 1 in there to make. So I'll bring you back when I've got all of these cut. So here's what I had left over after I got my 12. I had 2 and then this little tiny strip right here. And as you remember, when I was trimming the ends, I took very little off of the ends. So you're either gonna get 1, and if you cut your ends off quite thick, you won't get a full one here, but you'll at least get one out of it. If you think you're going to make more mistakes than one mistake, cut your fabric a little bit longer than 25 inches. So I'm going to set these aside in case I need them, because sometimes, you know, there's mistakes to be made in other places. So I'll set those aside. Okay, so I've got all my sashing strips back on my board. These are going to actually be for the horizontal sashing, and I'll show you how to piece those together in a minute. I just wanted to go ahead and get them cut into strips. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to go to my quilt wall, and I'm going to take off each of these top row blocks, and I am going to put them in order so I know where each one goes, even though it's pretty easy to see this. And I am going to put a sashing strip on the left side of each block. So here's my first block right here. I am going to take my sashing strip, and it should be the same size as my block if I was an accurate sewer, and my block should be 8.5 inches wide. The only ones that aren't going to be 8.5 at this point are the flags, and I'm going to show you how we do those flags when I get to the second row. The flags are 8.5 inches wide, but they don't have, I haven't added anything on the top or the bottom yet to make them 8.5 inches tall. They're just shy, and I'll show you what we're going to do with them when we get there. So I'm going to take each of my blocks on the top row, and I'm going to add a sashing to the left side, and you'll just match right sides together, so 1/4 inch seam down the side. And when I get to my last chain block, I'm going to add the one on the left and then also add one on the right. So it's going to have 2 since it's the end. Now we'll do the same thing for all of these rows, but when we get to the second row, we'll talk about these flag blocks. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Once I have the sashing on each block, I am going to be sewing them together, and I'll bring you back for that too. So I have all of my blocks for the first row with a sashing piece on the left side, and the last block I have has sashing pieces on the left and the right. So now we're going to put all of these blocks together in a strip, and all we're going to do is we're going to take these 2 blocks that are supposed to be side by side, right sides together, so 1/4 inch away. I'll probably do that one, and then I'll just chain piece this next set like this, 1/4 inch away, and then I'll do this one 1/4 inch away, and then after I have those 3 sewn together, or those 3 sets, then I'll sew those sets together, okay? And when I bring you back, I'll have the whole strip done. Now I have all of the blocks put together for the top row, and I ended up pressing toward the sashing. And the reason I did that is we have so many seams, you know, on our cherry block. There's just a bunch of seams there. And there's a couple here too, that if I press toward the block, it's just too thick and bulky. So what I'm gonna do, since I'm pressing this sashing toward the sashing, when I get up here, I will take the blocks that I already made, these right here, and I'm going to reverse them. I had pressed them toward the red square. I'm going to press them all toward the sashing. So all of these are going to now go toward the sashing. That way, when I go to put this on, these are going to nest really nicely. And this is a part that it's nice to have them nesting, because sometimes you've got some pieces that are a little wider or some pieces that are a little narrower, and if you can get these nested, you can decide which side needs to be down toward the feed dogs and pull that extra in. So I am going to go ahead and do the rest of the rows, the next 2 rows here. And like I said earlier, on your flag block, because it is 8.5 by 7.5 right now. We need to make this 8.5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take fabric that I used for my stripes, so whatever I used to complete this block, I am going to take that light colored fabric and I'm going to put it down here. Since this is 7.5 and we're missing an inch to make it 8.5, once you add in seam allowance, that means we are going to add to this 1.5 inches. So the strip that we measure needs to be 1.5 inches by 8.5 inches. Now, if you want to make it a little bigger, like 1 3/4 inch by 8.5, you can, and then you can trim it down. So if you feel like, you know, you might not get it to be a nice straight line or something, overcut, make it a little wider, and then trim it down so that your block is 8.5 inches tall. So that's what I'm going to do. And we're just going to add it to the bottom. So that's how I'm going to fix that. So I will bring you back when I have all of my rows all sewn together, and we'll get to doing the sashing in between. So here I have the runner. It's actually vertical on my board here, but you can see how it's laid out. And I've left spaces in between for the sashing. And so that's what we're going to work on next. So we're going to need 1, 2, 3, and 4 pieces of sashing. And as you can see, we have the sashing at the top and the sashing at the bottom. So we need to go ahead and sew the sashing strips together so that we can put those in between. So let me bring you over and show you how we're going to do that. So here is our layout again, and here are the pieces that we have left for our sashing, and these are the ones that we had sewn together earlier. I believe we had 12 of those. So here's how we're going to lay it out. I don't know if you can see my little X's, but I have little X's on every other piece of sashing. All of these start off with one of the X's, and then this row doesn't have one, and then these have an X, none, X's, none. And basically anything with an X is this piece right here. So what we're going to do is we are going to lay this out just like this. I am going to put an X, this, together with just your plain sashing, like this. Then I'll put together another sashing with the red squares, and then a plain one, and so forth. So I'll be using 1, 2, 3 of these, and 1, 2, 3 of the plain sashings for each row. And I'm always going to start with one of these. Okay, I'll end with one of these. So I'm going to do 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows, 4 rows, just like that. Start with one of these, alternate with this, and you should end with this. I'll bring you back when I've got mine sewn together. You should have 4 strips. I now have all 4 strips sewn together, and remember, we're going to press toward the sashing because the sashings that we had in between the blocks were pressed toward the sashing as well. So we want these to nest. So those are all pressed. And then at the very end, like I said, we ended with just a plain sashing. We have these 4 squares from cut A. And what we're going to do is we're just going to add them to each of our 4 strip ends. So go ahead and sew all 4 of those on, and then I'm going to go ahead and hang these up on the quilt wall with the blocks, and we'll take a look at it. Now I don't have the sashing sewn on yet, but I have it pinned on the wall here, And this is what it's going to look like when it's all pieced together. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this strip of blocks and attach this sashing piece to it. This strip of blocks, attach this sashing piece to it. And then this strip of blocks and attach this piece to it. Then I'll attach the blocks and then I'll add the last piece of sashing. And once I have all of that done, I will bring you right back. So I wanted to share with you how to put the sashing on the blocks. So here is the strip of blocks and here's the sashing. We're putting it right sides together. And if you've ironed the seam allowance the correct way, those are going to be nesting and you can match those up very nicely. Now, if while you're doing this, you notice that either your sashing strip or your block is bigger than the other, remember the trick with the feed dogs. Match these up regardless. Match these cornerstones or these red square sashing pieces to the sashing on the quilt here. And let me see if this one worked. That one was good. This one may, nope, this one's gonna be good. Hold on, we'll find one. I know that I'm going to have several. If you have, this one's gonna be just a tiny bit maybe. One of them larger. Okay, so see this one hangs over this much extra. So this block was probably not exactly 8.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead, oops, that one should be folded this way. Match my sashing corners. And then when I stretch it, I'm not stretching it very hard. I could stretch it more and it just about closes up, but it doesn't. We're going to put the loose side, the side that has more fabric, down, and that will be taken in with the feed dogs. And you'll just have to just go careful with it. Be sure you keep your pin over here so that it doesn't pull your fabric and make it short. You want these to be in the right spot. Now this should be able to take it in because it's going for quite a distance. If you have one that you don't think is going to be able to take it in, you might have to remove a piece of sashing and trim your block. But I think most of the time you can get it to work. Sometimes I will go ahead and put a pin about in the middle. That way I can ensure that it's going to be taken in over here and taken in over here and not just all right here. So that is the way to take care if you have one, either the block or the sashing bigger than the other. So I'm going to go ahead and keep working on these and I will bring you back when they're all on. Now I have all of the sashing sewn into the quilt and it is all pieced together and this is what it looks like. Of course, in order for it to fit on my design wall, I had to turn it on its side, but that's okay. So what I've done now is I have cut out 5 strips that are width of fabric that are 1 3/4 inch wide. And I'm going to use that for my borders. Now, if you measure your quilt right now, according to the directions, if my figuring is correct, it should be 57.25 or 57 1/4 inches by 29.5 inches. And yours probably will not be exactly that because of seam allowance, cutting, and just all sorts of things. Mine measures very close to that, so I'm going to be using those measurements to cut. Well, actually, I'm going to be using the 29.5 to cut my first border, and I'm going to do the sides first, these short ends. So if yours comes out different and both of your sides are different from one another, you could take the top measurement, the bottom measurement, and then a middle measurement, divide it by 3, add those 3 together and divide it by 3, and that will be the average, so that will be pretty much what your border should measure. Remember, you can always take a little bit of it in as you're sewing, but you don't want to take up too much. So if you're like a 1/2 of an inch off, that can be pulled in real easily. So I'm going to go ahead and get the top border and the bottom border on, and then I'll bring you back. I am bringing you back because as I started putting this on, I thought, you know, there are probably people out there that have not added a border. So I am going to show you on the short side because it's easy to get right here in the screen. So this is the piece that we are starting with. This is the side of our runner. And when I cut my siding pieces or my border pieces, I will trim off the selvage, but then I will measure it and I will put a pin where that measurement that I need is. I do not cut the remaining piece just because I know that sometimes I make a mistake and I want to get this pinned on before I make that cut. But if you're confident in yourself, go ahead and cut it. But I know sometimes I'm doing about 3 things at once and I don't want to recut some border fabric. So what I do is I take my border fabric and I fold it in half, and here is from end to end where that pin is the end. And then I can either finger press. I'm going to put a pin in there because I have another crease in this piece of fabric where the middle was, or where the fold was. So this is my middle. Then I can do the same thing with my quilt or my runner, whatever project you're making, and I can put a pin in the middle here. A lot of times on a quilt or project, it's easy to see where the middle is, especially if your blocks are symmetrical. And so this line right here was our middle line actually. So that's where that pin is. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to match the middle parts. And remember, on solid fabrics, there's not a right or wrong side. So I'm going to match these 2 middles. I'm going to match the ends and match them up. Even if there's a little extra fabric on one side or the other, match those ends. And match this end. Now, if you had to find the average, your border piece is not going to be the perfect size because you had to find the average. So whichever you have that is looser, remember, that's going to go toward your feed dogs. That will go down. This, I think, was measured pretty accurately because I think this was the size that was called for. And then I'm just going to put some pins just to keep it in line. Sometimes our feed dogs at the bottom will feed that bottom fabric faster, and at the end it won't be lined up. So I like to put a few pins about every 6 or 7 inches. And now I'm ready to go and sew this 1/4 inch away from the edge. Once that's done, I will then trim this so that it's square with the quilt. Now, I will do the same thing for this end, and then I'm going to bring you back and we'll talk about the length for our longer sides. So I have the top border on and the bottom border on. Actually, they're the side borders. Now we're ready for our long borders on each top and bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our strips and I'm going to sew them together. Some people like to do a diagonal seam like we do with binding. I like to just do a straight seam. It's fine with me on the borders because you don't have to worry about the bulk. So whichever you prefer to do. Then what we're going to do is we are going to measure this and this. And if you had perfect seams and perfect cuts, you should have 59 3/4 inches. But of course, seam allowance may be different or your fabrics weren't cut exactly, and that's fine. Most of the time, they're not going to be exact. So if that's the case, again, the same thing. You measure this, you measure this. This is a short piece, so you could just measure the 2 and divide by 2, and that would be the length of your borders. Or you could do all 3, the middle and each side, divide by 3, and that's the length of your borders that you need to cut. So I'm gonna do, I think I measured mine and they were very close to the 59 3/4, so I'm just gonna cut it as 59 3/4, but I'm going to be sewing 2 sections together, and then like I did with the other one, I will measure and pin it, and then I'll find the middle of this, pin it, and just space it out all the way and sew them on. So go ahead and sew your borders on the top and the bottom, and I'll bring it back when I've got mine. And there we have all the borders on it, and it is finished. The top part is finished. Now I need to find time to quilt it. So that is my goal, to get this on the long arm and get it quilted. But I just love it. I think it's going to be perfect. I was able to get this on my long arm, and I found a pantograph that had a star and feather pattern on it, and it looked real cute, and I thought it went well with this runner. And it didn't take long to get it quilted since it's not a full quilt, and I think it looks great. After I took it off the long arm, I used the same fabric that I used in the chain blocks to make my binding, and I machine stitched it onto the runner. And here it is, all finished. I'm really happy with it. I hope you get a chance to make this runner. When I look at it, it says summertime to me, so I'm naming it the Summertime Runner. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate that. Also, liking and sharing helps my channel out a lot, and I'd appreciate that too. So I hope you have a great week, and I hope to see you back here soon. Bye-bye.